I'm really excited to go on this cruise because I think it'll be much better than just sitting in a classroom all day. It's hands-on, and I'll get a lot more experience out of it.
I hope to be part of the group of people that help push this research forward.
What I hope to get out of this project is to learn more about marine animals as well as learning about the ocean itself.
To get a better understanding of how life in the ocean works.
What I'm looking to get out of this trip is to learn more about the patterns of all these whales.
An understanding of how marine animals interact with one another and how they affect our lives.
I'm looking forward to broadening my horizons as far as what I'm studying.
And not everybody gets an opportunity to go out on a research vessel. It's important to share these experiences with the broader public, especially from a student perspective.
If I can inspire a flicker of interest in something that I'm already interested in, I've done the basic job of passing on a torch to a younger generation.
Not everyone gets a chance to be here at sea on a research cruise, but through the Inner Space Center, now we can bring you with us. Welcome aboard. Hi everybody, welcome to Endeavor Live. My name is Holly Morin. I am a marine biologist with the Inner Space Center, and I will be your host today as we learn about the at-sea research being conducted by a group of oceanographers and 8 URI Honors students here on board the Endeavor. We're actually going to be chatting with one of those students, Ethan Kaprowski, in a moment. We're currently actually tucked in right outside of Block Island. The seas and the winds kicked up pretty significantly yesterday, so we ran for shelter per se to somewhere where it was a little bit more quiet. But as you can tell, I'm actually still inside. Outside is blue skies, nice sun, something we hadn't seen in a couple of days, but unfortunately the winds are still pretty heavy, so we decided to come on inside to do our broadcast today. And this is where we're going to kind of hang out for the rest of today until this afternoon, where hopefully the seas will quiet down and we can go back offshore and deploy some of the instruments that the students have been working with over the last couple of days. They've been very busy despite the weather, so they've been conducting net tows using something called bongo nets, which are 2 nets side by side that they deploy in the water to sample for very small microscopic critters. I don't know if you can see behind me, but they're actually looking at some of their catch right now on the microscopes. They've also deployed a visual plankton recorder. It's pretty cool. It's actually a giant microscope that takes about 60 pictures per second, and so they can actually see the plankton. It's gone, the data's fed into a computer afterwards, so they can actually see the plankton or the other animals or the plants that are in the water without actually having to physically sample with the nets. They've also been putting out some echo sounders that use underwater sound to visualize the water, and they've been dropping a CTD rosette, which samples your conductivity, your temperature, salinity, and other aspects, other ocean properties as the instrument moves through the water column. So a lot of activities been happening on the ship that we'll be sharing with you shortly. I want you to remember that you can ask questions anytime during the broadcast. We actually have Gal, another one of our URI students here, on camera. She'll be relaying your questions to me as you type them in. So if you have any questions at any time, you can definitely be entering those while we continue with the broadcast. It's supposed to be a very interactive broadcast. So we're actually using telepresence, something you might be familiar with if you've used Skype or Facebook before to chat with family and friends. But what you're doing, what we do at the ISC is we use that technology to connect with ships that are out doing research, and we broadcast their audio and visual data live in real time. What makes the ISC so unique is that we can actually stream multiple ships all at once instead of just one single ship at one time. So to kick things off, what we're going to actually show right now is a real quick video that will introduce you to our students that we have on board the Endeavor with us today, and what the work is that they're going to be doing on board the ship, and really what got them excited about coming out here to see.
Personally, I think it's really important to communicate all of our findings so everyone has the same access to the same information and knowledge that we do.
Because as a student studying to become a scientist, I want to know what it takes to be a scientist out at sea.
I'm so excited to be participating in this cruise actually because I'm really curious about the whales and how their environment works.
I joined this class by accident, but I'm really happy I'm sticking with it because I've been exposed to so many different research methods and opportunities that I normally wouldn't have gotten.
Being from the Cape, I've heard about right whales my whole life, and I'm interested in learning more.
Because I'm really interested in the ocean, mainly because I'm from an island, I'm from Dominican Republic.
There's so many people out there who don't know what they want to do, and if I can inspire a flicker of interest in something that I'm already interested in, I think I've done the basic job of passing on a torch to a younger generation.
I think it's important to communicate science to the general public because we don't always understand how it affects our lives every single day.
To get people inspired and motivated into learning what's out there.
because I want to learn about how the changing oceanographic landscape is affecting the whale's pattern and behavior.
To have the opportunity to learn about the preservation of endangered whales.
I was born in Israel and I moved here when I was 6 years old, and both my parents have a biology background, so that's why I became really interested in sciences.
As someone studying civil engineering, I'm looking forward to broadening my horizons as far as what I'm studying, what I'm researching. Instead of just concrete, now I get to study whales and see how statistics changes with that.
I'm a very outgoing person. I strive to be the best at anything I can try or be, you know?
There's a real value in communicating science to the public because not many people get the opportunity like we do. So being able to broadcast it to a huge audience is something that we're able to give to you.
What motivated me to join this class was that I had to fulfill my honors requirement, but what kept me in the class was the prospect of this week-long cruise out on the ocean, and I love boats, and that really got me excited for it.
Hi everybody again. So again, if you have any questions, make sure that you send those in to us and we'll start organizing those so that we can start to answer them and really engage with you guys down on shore. So joining us now is Ethan Kaprosky. He is a sophomore at URI. He is an ocean engineering major. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Ethan, and what made you decide to want to come out on this research expedition, sign up for this class? I don't think this type of opportunity is something most students get a chance to sign up for. So why don't you just share with us, a little bit about yourself and what made you kind of gear up for this cruise?
Well, you've covered the basics. I'm a sophomore at URI studying ocean engineering. I'm originally from Connecticut, and I actually went to a high school called the Marine Science Magnet High School. Very ocean involved, and actually my high school sophomore year, I was able to come to the URI Bay campus and engage in this week-long marine technology thing that really got me into ocean engineering. And I actually took a tour of this ship, and I never thought that 4 years later in my sophomore year of college, I would be going on an actual research cruise looking for whales, and I had to fulfill an honors requirement for my course. But I never even knew it was going to involve a cruise until the first day of class, and that really excited me, and I was so involved in the class from there on out, and I kept with it, and I'm so excited to be here.
Awesome. The funny thing is it shows how small of a world ocean science or marine biology can be. Is the project that Ethan is talking about was the Marine Technology for Teachers and Students, the MATS project, of which our team actually leads. So I worked with Ethan 3-4 years ago when that project, he was our first cohort of students. So it's great to see things come full circle and have Ethan back on board with us and doing these types of activities from the communication standpoint and also the actual science activity. When you found out there was a cruise aspect to the class itself, how did that make you feel? Were you excited? Were you anxious? Both?
Well, I was so excited because, college is where you're learning to do things in the real world, but it's kind of an escape from the real world, and you have to focus on your classes, focusing on all the math, especially for engineering. I'm going to lecture halls every day, I'm doing math, science, and all that, but to get out here in the real world and do actual data collection and analyzing what we're collecting, it's so exciting, and I love being out here on the open ocean, fresh air, salty wind, it's great.
So the data that you've been collecting, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about the instruments that you guys have been deploying and how that's been working?
Well, it's been some rough seas, but we have been able to get out the CTD, which measures conductivity, temperature, and depth, and those are really these big containers that can be closed automatically one at a time and collect different sea samples from different depths, different levels, different locations, and that's really cool. We also deployed, myself and some others deployed the bongo nets, which are these big like drum-like nets that go out all the way, and they collect all these different algae and copepods and phytoplankton and zooplankton, and that was really cool. It was a pain to clean them afterwards.
Why was it a pain to clean them?
Oh, because you have to backwash it. You don't want any cross-contamination from collection to collection, so you have to make sure that you get all of these little microscopic critters out every time.
How did you even clean them then? I mean, you can't really take the net, dunk it over the side. So how did you clean it?
Oh, we just had a big hose, and it was raining at the time, and we were all getting soaked, but you just had to go meticulously and through it slowly and try and get them all out as best you can.
And how did the collection actually work with these really tiny critters that you were collecting, these fine mesh nets? How did that work? Where did all those little critters go?
Well, they went into these little minusculi, I'm not sure if that was the right word, but they're these special bottles at the end of the nets, and they go through the nets, and all the big stuff can get filtered out, or all the super small stuff can get filtered out, and the big stuff stays in. And depending on the size of the mesh, we can collect bigger or smaller zooplankton and phytoplankton.
Okay. And then you guys, I remember seeing that there was a large sieve too that you guys kind of poured the sample through as well. Is that to make sure that you're collecting really the small critters that you're looking for? Is that to filter out some other things as well?
Exactly, and also just getting rid of the water, you know, before bringing them in. We don't want to bring that into the lab, all that water in the tube. So we're trying to really filter out some of the water and some of the smaller stuff that we don't need, some of the like particles, I guess, that would be benign.
Awesome. So the other thing I remember when you guys were out on deck, you were actually involved in the retrieval of the big CTD rosette, and that's when things kind of started to rock a little bit.
Yeah.
Why don't you share that experience? 'Cause I know when we talk about the seas were rough, they were rocky, that people might get a little anxious that it was a little hard on us, but you guys were still retrieving gear and still putting gear out. So why don't you share that experience?
Well, exactly. People always think, you know, we're putting it up, we're putting it over, and we're putting it down in the water, and then it's the same for the retrieval. But when the ship's rocking back and forth like that, it can become essentially a wrecking ball. So we had to use these long poles with hooks and carabiners on them, and you reach out as soon as it came out of the water and clip it on, and then you have these slack lines, and two people are holding them as tight as they can to make sure that it's not going to rock against the wind and break thousands of dollars worth of equipment in one go.
So we, hopefully you guys have been sending in some questions. Again, you should be able to see a little chat box that's right below the video viewer on the webpage that you guys are using to view the broadcast. So at any time you can type in those questions and then they'll get relayed to Gal. Looks like Gal actually has a couple of questions already written down for us, which is great. So Gal, if you have that first question, why don't you go ahead and relay it?
So our first question is from Monica, and she says, where will you be going on this week-long trip?
So Ethan, where are we going to be going on this week-long trip? Do you know why don't you maybe talk about where we were yesterday?
Well, we were out off of the shore of Rhode Island, and it's really, we're following these track lines, trying to find the whales and guessing, but it's also contingent on the weather. You know, we had to go duck and cover here behind Block Island, but hopefully we'll get out and be able to go farther. And if we can't find the whales, we might even go out as far as the continental shelf where the canyons are, where some of the prey in the deeper water could be for the whales.
So that's one thing we are looking at is we're looking for whales in the area, and we've had previous sightings data. So where the whales have been seen, there are folks that are actually doing aerial surveys for whales all throughout the season. They just kicked off their season. So we're using that sightings data to kind of guide us as to where the ship may go. And then once those whales, if there have been whales in that area, then we go and deploy the other instruments of the CTD, the visual plankton recorder, the bongo nets, to get an idea of what the water is like and what's in the waters, where the whales have been. And the scientists are trying to piece all those, or puzzle piece those pieces together to try to get the bigger picture of how the environment is working and how it's actually guiding where the whales may be in the overall marine food web. So yesterday we were off of Nantucket Shoals, which is just south and to the east of Rhode Island per se, and then today we're off of Block Island. We hope to go a little further offshore, maybe due south, because there have been whales that have been sighted due south of Rhode Island, which is not usually where they are. So that's really great. And then, like Ethan said, if we can, we'll go further offshore out to the break, out to the continental shelf break. If not, if the weather kicks up, we'll stay more closer to shore. But again, the whales have been sighted here, so we'll continue to sample in this area. Next question, Gal.
So our next question is from Charlene from Long Avenue, and she says, how big are zooplankton, and also who eat the zooplankton?
Awesome question. So we're talking about zooplankton, which are our next level up in our food web from the bottom, phytoplankton. How big do they get, and then who eats them?
Well, it all depends on the species of zooplankton. You gotta think there's thousands and different species of the zooplankton, all differing in size. They can be the larvae, so the baby fish and baby other animals that haven't matured yet, but for the most part they can be as small as micrometers across, and they can be as big as a few centimeters or millimeters across. You know, it all depends on the species you're looking for, and what's eating them are going to be those kind of mid-level tier, all fish, anything that's really trying to eat something. Those zooplankton are fair game to them, especially they're vulnerable, they're floating, and they have a good source of energy for them.
Yeah, so if you're thinking about the zooplankton, which Ethan said can, be very small, micrometers up to a few millimeters, there's actually a ctenophore, which is a type of jellyfish that we can actually see that's pretty big. It's probably maybe a couple of centimeters. They can actually see with the naked eye. So you're not just talking about copepods. These zooplankton are also going to be larval stages of fish. They had an anemone larvae. They're going to be crab larvae, and a whole host of different animals in a range of sizes. And it's anything from fish up to the whales that are feeding on those plankton at different stages. And again, depending on where they are and what they might have access to. Lawn Avenue in Jamestown, that was an absolutely fantastic question. Thank you so much. Hopefully you have more that you're sending in. Gal, do you have more?
This question comes from 6th graders in Jamestown. And why are you looking for the whales?
So why are we looking for the whales? I'm going to field this one if that's okay.
That's all right.
All right. So the whales, there are a lot of different whale species that are in these waters. So you've got critically endangered right whales, which there are less than 500 of them. You've also got humpback whales, minke whales, sei whales. These are all baleen whales. So they're actually using long hairs that are hanging out of their mouths, the same material as your fingernails, or it's called keratin. And they're filter feeding different small critters, fish, copepods out of the water to feed. There are other species of whales, so your toothed whales, your dolphins, and your porpoises that are also in these waters. But we're actually looking for those large baleen whales. And the reason why we're looking for them is so right whales are critically endangered. They were hunted a long time ago and their population dropped significantly. And so now, unfortunately, they have a tendency to get entangled in fishing gear as well as get struck by boats. So their population numbers haven't recovered. So we're wanting to make sure that we understand where they're going and what they're doing so that we can make better management decisions and conservation actions. And the same then carries over for the rest of the whale species that are in these waters, that if we start to understand where they're going and what's driving their distributions, then we can better manage them and make sure that those types of interactions between fisheries or vessels are reduced. So that's why it's really important we understand where the whales are going. Awesome question. Gal, if you want to field another one, that'd be awesome.
Yep. So this comes from Robbie from Narragansett, and he asks, what types of whales do you hope to see out at sea?
So Ethan, Robbie wants to know, what type of whales do you hope to see while we're out at sea?
Well, like you said, you covered a lot of them just then, but primarily we're focusing on the right whales because they're so endangered. But alongside that, we're looking for those other baleen whales for the most part. Those humpback whales and the sei whales and the minke whales maybe and the fin. Mm-hmm. And we're really hoping to find out how the differences in the ocean properties are influencing how they're moving, what they're doing, and where they're going. And also, you know, if we hope to find some of the beak whales along here, like the dolphins and some of the toothed whales, that'd be great as well.
Do you want to talk at all about, so is it easy to find the whales? How do you guys are actually looking for the whales?
It's really not. The only mammals we've found have been the people looking for them on the flying bridge. And we have these big binoculars called the big eyes, and they're like half the size of Holly in length. They're huge. And you know, that they can be a little disorienting when the ship's moving all up and down. And these big eyes, you're trying to look at one little spot like half a mile or 3/4 mile away, and you're just trying to hold on and find it, and all these white caps and waves are kind of obscuring your view. You think you see a whale, and then you're like, oh, it was just a little white cap, but we're really hoping to find some when the sea's calm.
And what they're actually looking for, too, are the dorsal fins that are on the backs of some of these whales. Right whales actually don't have a dorsal fin, so then what they're looking for is the spout or the blow that comes from when the whale reaches the surface to take a breath. And so if you imagine when you have waves like we're seeing, or the waves we saw yesterday, that if you're looking for a spout and you're having sea spray, it's really hard to distinguish between the two. So it's been a challenge. I've been saying that would be the one thing thus far with the weather that's been really tricky is the marine mammal surveys, but we can't control the weather. We're still out here at sea doing the work that we're trying to get done. And that's the nature of oceanography. So one final question, Gal.
So our final question comes from Curtis Corners Middle School, and they ask, have you seen any microplastics in our nets?
What an absolutely fantastic question, Curtis Corner Middle School. They want to know if we've seen any microplastics in any of our catches. So little pieces, super tiny pieces of plastic. I don't think we've seen any, Ethan. Do you remember seeing any that have come through in the net toes?
I haven't looked at the microscopes at all. I know they're trying to sieve that out. I don't think I've seen, but I have on the flying bridge seen, I think, fishing gear, some plastic buoys, and maybe stuff like that floating in the water. So there's definitely some plastic here. Fortunately, it's not that bad, though, we've seen.
Yeah, no microplastics yet. So again, great question. Thank you so very much, everybody, for asking your questions today. I want to remind you that if you haven't, if you had questions that asked or you have more questions, please feel free to go onto social media, so the Interspace Center's Facebook page or our Twitter feed, and you can type in your questions there and use the hashtag EndeavorLive, and then we'll try to answer those questions, as many as possible, throughout the day today, again, using that same hashtag EndeavorLive. You guys have been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us today. Be sure to check out the Interspace Center's website so you can follow along with other ocean exploration expeditions that are coming up. I know the Okeanos Explorer will be kicking off next week, so something definitely to tune into as well. And definitely follow along with us for this expedition. We're sailing all the way through Sunday through our social media feeds, so Facebook and Twitter, and then Instagram. The students are actually taking over the Instagram page for the Interspace Center. Ethan had it yesterday. I believe Gwen has it today, so you can hear or see their experiences. They're sharing their stories and their posts. It's just been a really great outlet for them. But otherwise, have an absolutely wonderful Thursday. Thanks to Gal for fielding all of our questions. Thank you, Ethan, for taking some time today to share your experiences and your and everything that's been going on. And we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye, everybody.
Yeah.